Welcome, everyone, to the Northeast Indiana Basketball Summit. I'm your host, Ben Smith, joined by my co-host, Jeff Metzger. Before introducing our guests, we want to thank Feel for the Game for providing the platform to have all these presentations live and available for replay. You can check out all the resources over at feelforthegame.com. Our guest today is Jordan Kerner. Jordan, I know you've been in a lot of different places. I'm kind of going to let you introduce yourself if you'd like. Tell everybody what you're doing now and what you've been doing over the last few years. I know we met on I think the AAU scene. I think you're at Team Focus, so that's where I know you from. But I know you're doing a lot of things. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, it's an honor. Honestly, it's a privilege to be with you guys and to communicate with you. I actually got my coaching start through Spies. I played for Casey Adams, and so when Casey was still through Spies, he gave me my first coaching opportunity because I begged him to let me coach. I think I was 16. I was a junior in high school when I started, and he gave me like a 5th and 6th grade team, and it just gradually grew from there with age groups and so forth. And then the transition to Team Focus happened. I think that was 2016, I want to say. And I was the COO for Team Focus. I coached many grade levels as well. And then I got hired in May of 2018 by Greg Miller, who's now at Trinity International, and is a fantastic coach. He's honestly, I think, one of the best in the country, and he's going to do amazing things. But he was at Cincinnati Christian, his first head job after leaving Grace. And so he hired me there. I was his associate head. And then we both went separate ways. And now I'm with Asbury University as a coach. And I also have a small business on the side called Behavior Bloom, where I work with different teams and other athletes as well, and businesses in behavioral development and things of that nature. So that's what I've been up to, man. You're probably right. That's probably where we got connected somewhere along the way, and just on the AAU scene. But now we're here just trying to survive and advance in the college life. So this is what we're doing now.
Awesome. So you're talking today some type of mental health, kind of that kind of situation. We had one to start the series this couple weeks ago, and we're kind of bookending it. So I think it's a perfect tie-in. So it's all yours.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to share this real quick so everyone can see. What we're really going to be talking about, and it was in that slide, but the mental game and how to use timeouts effectively. After all the coaches I've been around, have been in a lot of huddles, whether on staff or just kind of behind the scenes helping a team or whatever. There are so many coaches that do not use timeouts effectively. So we're going to dive into that as well. So before we get started, as we get started, I should say, I want to start off with a little bit of a application, okay? And I want you to take a few minutes real quick to write out a practice plan. Now, this is the context of the practice plan. You're actually going to do 2, okay? Don't think too hard because we're going to try to just move on, but you're going to do 2 practice plans, okay? So practice plan 1 is, think you're 2 weeks into the season, okay? And you're prepping for your first home opener or whatever, your first game of the season, okay? So you're early on, you have nothing but practices so far, you're prepping for that first game. How do you plan? What's your preparation? If you did 1 practice plan, just do you're covering a 70-minute practice or whatever, okay? Go how you would plan that, okay? Second practice plan is you're in the postseason, right? And you're prepping for what I want you to think of is whatever game you have not, your highest game you haven't won, right? So if you haven't won a sectional title, what I want you to do is prep a practice plan that's in lieu of that sectional title game, okay? If it's a regional title, if it's second round of sectional, whatever it is, that's the context for the second practice plan, okay? So 1 is you're early on in the season, okay? You're prepping for game 1. What does that practice plan look like? Practice plan 2 is you are prepping for the game you have not won yet in the postseason, okay? Sectional title, second round, first round, whatever, okay? So going to be a little odd, but that's how we're going to start. So take a couple minutes. Maybe you guys have already started. I'll give you guys a couple minutes, and then I'll just keep going. Okay, but that's how we're going to start real quick. And obviously, chime in if you have any questions or need any further clarification. Okay. If you're not finished, that's okay. You can kind of jot down or add in some extra details if you want later. But I want you to have that in mind as we kind of talk about this and how you structured your practice. What things did you add? What did you find important in developing those practice plans in those two contexts? Okay. All right. So as we look forward and we talk about the mental game, we have to define what mental toughness is, right? And I like this definition. I'm going to minimize that. I like this definition: having the natural or developed psychological edge that enables you to generally cope better than your opponents with the many demands that sport places on a performer, and specifically be more consistent and better than your opponents and remaining determined, focused, confident, and in control under pressure. Okay. One thing I like about this definition is it says or developed. Okay. A lot of times people, I don't know why people say this, honestly, if it's, just kind of a pick up your bootstraps or, whatever type of philosophy, but a lot of people will say that, people are born with that edge. And in a lot of cases that can be true, but it can also be developed. It can be taught and learned how to really compete at a high level. There have been 2 instances in my life where I played with someone and even coached a player that just took my competitiveness to a next level. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the name. You should. He was an excellent player in the 2013 class. My class played for KC, played at Huntington North. Noah Reed, just an absolute beast of a competitor. He ended up playing at Defiance for a year, I think, and has gone on to I think he's sports broadcasting now. That's doing awesome. But that guy had such an edge, and he just refused to quit. And me as a player, I wish I had more time with him because, man, he raised my bar. And then 2 years ago, when I was coaching at Cincinnati Christian, we had a player named Blake Walsman, who was an absolute animal. I mean, unbelievable. He's playing in Iceland now professionally. And the best – I'm going to bring up this story because I want it to be emphasized that you can absolutely develop a player's mental toughness, and you can even develop yours as a coach. We were, I think, 14 and 15. It was the last game of the season. I mean, you couldn't write it any better than this. It was the last game of the season. We are prepping for Indiana University Southeast. They were in the top 20, I would say maybe 19 in the country at the time. One of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. Just absolutely lethal. And I think their tallest player, they start 6'4". I mean, they're a small lineup, but they're very effective. And we needed to win that game to have any sort of postseason opportunity. 2 days prior to that game, Blake Walsman, our All-American, leading rebounder in the country, rolls his ankle pretty severely in a practice. And the day before the game, we go to the trainers and they're like, dude, his ankle is at 20%. This is hand to God honest. They're like, dude, his ankle's at 20%. And, Greg and I look at each other like, great. This is awesome. And not only did Blake Walsman end up playing that next game, I think he had 25 points, 18 rebounds, and he basically won us the game. We had a lot of players that really came through, but he did that on an ankle that was at best 50%. I mean, it was taped to an unbelievable level, and he just absolutely dominated. I mean, the stats are available at some point. You guys should definitely go look at it, but it was unreal. I just remember watching this kid compete, limp down the court. I mean, it was like if Michael Jordan's flu game was impressive, this is one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. So people can absolutely develop their mental toughness, their competitive edge. It can be taught and learned, and that's very important to think about as we go on in this conversation. So the importance of mental toughness, through substantial research, it's been shown that mental toughness is positively correlated to successful athletes. If you have an athlete that lacks severely mental toughness, you're going to have a hard time winning key games or winning key moments in games. When it comes down to the wire, if you have a roster full of kids that aren't mentally tough, that's going to cause a problem. But again, it can be taught. So there's nothing to really fear there. So on top of that, kind of piggybacking on what I just said. So in competitive sports, so as you progress in age group, as you progress in competition, skills start to get pretty evenly matched, right? It's like that kid that's a dominant eighth grader, it's because he's 6'3" and he's pretty athletic, but he peaks right there, right? Because all of a sudden everyone starts coming with. So it happens, just in a broader sense. So as the competitive level gets raised, the skills are pretty often matched. So what's the cause agent that will be the tipping point that will win you guys the games? It's going to be a roster full of strong IQ, EQ, and mental toughness. So how can we break this down a little bit? It's important to think of the 4 C's model. There's research on this. If you typed in the 4 C's model of mental toughness, this would probably come up, and you can find some scholarly articles on these things. But confidence, control, commitment, and change. And I'll dive into those a little bit more later. But 4 C's model, very, very important as you're developing your and your players' mental toughness. So I don't know if any of you have ever read the book Crucial Conversations. It's an amazing book. I highly recommend it. It's a business communication book, but it's applicable to pretty much any interpersonal relationship, whether it's dating or your player to coach or whatever it is. You can apply it to that. And there's 3 elements to a crucial conversation. It's high emotion, high stakes, and opposing opinions. And I kind of reformatted it to fit this. But when I think about this in an athletic standpoint, when I think about it in a game standpoint, and this is really a major part that I worked with Asbury last year with our guys. I took 2 to 3 players per class, and we dove into stuff like this throughout the season. And so when we would review film and things of that nature, we're looking at high emotion. At what points of the game did tensions start to rise and things of that nature? How do we handle? Are there high stakes? Is it a key game? And is there high opposition? Are you disagreeing with your coach? Are you disagreeing with your staff as a coach? Is the opponent themselves a big beast? Are they a Goliath, right? So let's break these down a little bit more. If you have these 3 things, you're probably in a crucial situation is the point of this. But tensions and senses are heightened as emotions rise. Okay, so when there's key points in games, right, it's almost like that point where I know all of us as coaches have felt this moment at some point where something crazy happens, or maybe you were up and all of a sudden other team starts to make a run, and you kind of start getting chills, or maybe one of your guys did something amazing, or they executed on something that you were practicing in practice for weeks, right? And there's just that moment where you're just like I can think back, my hair stands up on the back of my neck, I get goosebumps, and I'm like, dude, this is why I freaking do this, right? But now that's a good high emotion, right? Now there's also those elements where things are going haywire, things are going way off the rails, okay? And in those moments, it's essential to know how to control emotions and stay focused to make effective decisions. And I'm speaking to you coaches. This is just as important to you guys as it is to your players. I'll get into that in a second. So high stakes. So when there's a lot at stake, that's when fear starts to step in, right? If, for us, when I bring up that story again from CCU, and we're getting ready to play Southeast for a game that not only was the opponent a big deal. They were very, very good. Top of the conference, top 20 in the nation. But there was a lot on the line. If we lost, that was it. No postseason. Okay. And I think even in the last 7 games, we had to go 5-2 to break even and win a playoff or a postseason berth, right? So we had just grinded to put ourselves in this position. It came down to one game, winner take all type of thing. If we lose, we're done. If we win, we live to find another day. Those are high stakes, right? And that's when fear steps in. You start questioning yourself, and you start going, I don't think we can do it. Okay, so that's when confidence from those 4 C's come in. Okay, you got to have confidence here. High opposition, so commitment and being able to adapt to change enter the equation here. So as you can see, these are where the 4 C's from that model are kind of applied, right? So with high emotion, you got to learn how to control your emotions, got to learn how to control the narrative in the environment. When there's high stakes, that's when confidence comes in. You got to learn how to navigate those fears and doubts. High opposition, you have to have high commitment to executing the goal. And when things go haywire, when the refs start getting, ridiculous, as they always do in key moments, or maybe the 7th man off their bench just comes in, hits 3 threes, and he's not even on your scouting report, right? Whatever happens, you got to be able to adapt to change. Okay, so that's where those 4 C's come in. Okay, so now let's start talking about winning the mental game. So these are some things. We define some things. We know that it's important, right? We all agree that it's important. But now let's talk about winning the mental game. And the thing is, who determines this? It's you guys as coaches. This is absolutely on you guys to win the mental game first. If the leader is nervous, is going haywire, what does that communicate to the players, to people that are being led? You can almost guarantee that they're going to have that same effect. And if you think about a shepherd and sheep, okay, one reason why this is such a good, often used example of leadership, shepherd and sheep, is because sheep look to that shepherd in all events and scenarios. Okay, their survival is reliant upon the shepherd. Okay, so if they see the shepherd start freaking out, the sheep themselves, they go crazy. Okay, so it's a very, very applicable thing. So I love this picture because there are so many coaches that this is their demeanor, okay? And far be it from me to tell people how to lead their players, but more often than not, this type of coaching doesn't get through. It takes a very, very special player and relationship for you to go to this level, especially in AAU. Once I left AAU and got into college, and it's not to speak down on it, I love coaching AAU, and it's such an important tool to basketball for kids, for coaches, or whatever. But I realized I made it so much about me and the program, and I started making it less about the kids. And I'm like, dude, it's got to be fun. And I know it sounds very simple in kindergarten, but I had to really check my motivation. I had to check my philosophy. I had to check a lot of things. And I just realized, I was like, this does not really get through to players. 9 times out of 10, that's the body language. And people can go on and say, they understand, or, we have a special bond, and I know I can do that with that player. Guys, in a moment, when there's high emotions, there's a lot at stake, and, there's high opposition, you got to be calm. Calm will always prevail over chaos every single time. Okay. So if you go haywire on somebody, you wreak havoc on one of your players, dude, that's not going to translate well. I mean, think about it for you. If you were ever in a position where you just got absolutely berated by a boss, or, anybody in any sort of leadership scenario, and not only that, but it's also in front of people, it's public. Do you think that went in your head, you're going, all right, I got to step it up? In the moment, probably not. In the back of your head, you're like, okay, shoot, yeah, I really got to. But you're embarrassed. You're questioning yourself. You just lost a lot of confidence. You probably feel like you lost some on social level a little bit. You just got embarrassed in front of people a little bit. It doesn't work. So we'll get into that in a second. But so does this guy look like he's in control? Is he look like he has confidence? for me, somebody that has confidence can be calm. It doesn't mean internally they might not be freaking out. That's one thing, right? But if I'm another coach and our guys just went on a 12-4 run and their coach is calm, cool, collected, I'm going, man, why is he not freaking out right now? Now I'm starting to like get mad at my guys, like, hey, we got to pick it up even more, okay? But if he's losing his mind, we just won, right? If he starts losing on his players starts losing it on each other, that's ball game. That 12-4 run is going to go, 20-6 or whatever. I mean, it's going to pile up, okay? Is he inspiring mental toughness? Is he inspiring confidence? Probably not, right? Okay. So how much time are you carving out for mental development? Okay. And this is going to be the last practice plan we'll have. And what I want you to do is I want you to make another one, and it could be of either of those two contexts that we did at the beginning. Okay. So you're either prepping for that first game of the year, or you are prepping for like that postseason game that you have not won yet, right? That game that you just haven't been able to get past. And now what I want you to do is I want you to carve time. I don't care how much, but I want you to carve time out in that practice plan for some sort of mental development. Okay. And then I want you to compare and contrast. And did you do it the first time? 9 times out of 10, coaches don't. Okay. And that's kind of the point of the practice here is 9 times out of 10, coaches are like, oh, well, we need to do scout work. We need to do film. Which film is good, but all of those things, do some drills, 2-ball dribbling or whatever. And they always leave out mental development, even though we all agree that the mental game is so important. And we all agree that successful athletes are directly linked with mental toughness, but we do not practice it. Okay. So I want you might have already been going, so I won't take as long with this one, but take another practice plan and write out and carve out time for mental development. Go ahead. Kadoke. Cool. So let's push forward a little bit. What are some more ways you can have this applied in practice, right? So for me, you win the game in preparation. And where do you get to prepare? And that's in practice. If you come into a game underprepared, man, you do not give yourself a good chance to win the game, right? So how are we preparing? Okay, so here are some applications that I started doing as a coach that I try to introduce here at the next level, and just some ways that I try to pay that forward. Okay, aversive simulations. Okay, so can you create a stressful situation? And I emphasize this here in parentheses, in a controlled environment. Okay, so what this really means is that you are putting your players purposefully and intentionally in a situation that will cause stress in the context of a game, right? So what I mean by that is you need to start doing these simulations that are live, and I'm not talking about just scrimmaging and letting them rolling the ball out, letting them go. But I'm talking about not just doing scout work. Okay, that'll come. I'm talking about putting them in key situations and putting the ball in the hands of your players, and you start stepping out. Okay, because what's going to happen is, and many of you have probably learned this at some point, your job is 10% in the game at that. As soon as that ball goes up and it's tip off, it's 90% in their hands. 90% of the game. Okay. unless you are a very, very, very structured coach. Like some, I can think of one specifically in Fort Wayne that's incredibly structured. But at best, he's got 25% of the game in his hands. Okay. Your players dictate so much of how the game goes. They got to be well equipped to handle that responsibility, right? We cannot, I'll get in that a little bit, but that's a big idea. Okay. So it's, can you have these drills that puts them in a stressful situation in a controlled way to develop players' resilience to adverse stimuli? So as you do this over time, their ability to, fight through those stressful situations is going to increase and increase and increase and increase. So by the time you're in that sectional title game and your school hasn't won that in 15 years, right? You haven't won it yourself yet, or whatever the scenario is, you're going to be able to look at your players and go, yeah, we got this 100%. So again, that's where that confidence and control and, all those 4 C's start re-entering the equation again. So that's how important they are, right? So that's very, very big, okay? Film. So can you take time to break down mental breakdowns during film? Okay. So what I'm trying to get to is it needs to be more than this status quo. Hey, this is what they run. They run the flex. Okay. So we see here that Tim's going to come down off that down screen. And it's got to be more than that. You have to inspire more and show these types of things, right? So if you got a star player, right, or maybe a role player, for the last 3 games, he's checked in, but he's been checked out. You need to, not in a way of exposure, as far as not putting this kid on blast, but in a way that emphasizes a point. And it needs to be a conversation. It needs to be going, hey, man, this has been 3 straight games. What's going on, right? And if that needs to be a private conversation, that's one thing. The way I would do it is I would have a private conversation first and say, hey, we're going to talk about this as a group during film. Let's have a conversation first. And I don't want you to be blindsided. You never want to blindside an athlete, right? For sure. So I'd have that conversation first and then bring it up in film. And guys, this body language, it matters. I know all of us as coaches, we preach and teach that, body language, preparation translates. Okay. So expose that. Show it in real time in a game. 90%, that's exaggeratory. I don't know if that's true or not, but a large majority of people are visual learners, right? They need to see it happen in real time. We say it all the time, reinforce it through visual application, take time in film to break down mental breakdowns, okay? IQ drills. So this kind of links back to adverse simulations, but are you creating robots or responders, okay? And what I mean by that is, are you so structured and do you hold on so tightly to the decisions that your players make? Do they have to walk the ball up every single possession and they better run a set every single possession? Or are you creating intelligent ball players that can read the game and react? I'm telling you, if you build a roster of kids that can read and react to a game, at the high school level, especially, you will be so far and above. I'm going to use 90% of the programs that you come across. I promise you. There are so many coaches that are good coaches, but they build robots. And that's why they peak in I shouldn't say peak in postseason, but that's why they always hit that plateau, right? I think of one coach specifically that he just cannot get past this plateau. And it is largely because of that. It's so important, you guys. So it really, if you hear anything, there's a lot of good nuggets in here, but do not create robots. Create critical thinkers, okay? Critical thinking leads to a strong mental game, okay? Okay, so more applications here. And this is a little bit outside of practice. This is more of the relational side of this and what it looks like outside of the competition side, okay? Expectations are huge, guys. And, in this context, a lot of times this word is used as roles, right? We always talk about roles. In almost every program I've been a part of as a player or as a coach, roles are laid out at the very beginning of the year and never talked about again. And if they do get talked about, it's, you're supposed to be our, defensive whatever, or you're supposed to be our 3-and-D guy, right? And it's in a moment of like aggression. It's in a moment of, just this accusatory, like you're not living up. Guys, you need to consistently bring this up, which leads to the next part. You must consistently, like every week, follow up on the progress. It's your job to create an atmosphere of openness and compassion. So when you have these meetings and you're following up, it can't really be this thing of you are failing, right? And I know this is a lot of people hate this idea, and they think the power of positivity was somehow invented by millennials and we're so soft and all of these things. But there is so much research that backs positive psychology and positive reinforcement and just the changing of a narrative. If you're sitting down with a player that's whatever reason struggling and you're trying to follow up on his role and the expectations that were laid out beginning of the year, room for improvement, right? It's not failure, okay? But even if you use that word, do it in the right context. Coach Wooden said that failure and mistakes are a stepping stone for success. Something like that. I don't know. I don't read that much, so it's something like that, right? But if Coach Wooden, who is one of the top people that we adhere to in coaching philosophy, can say, hey, yeah, no, like your players probably should be falling short at some point. If not, they're probably not trying very hard, okay, or something's off. If he can admit that, then there shouldn't be any reason why we can't also see that as an important part to their growth and development. And then this is a fun one as well, personality assessments. My favorite one right now is the Enneagram. If you haven't taken it, if you don't know what it is, definitely do some research. It's just another, think of the Myers-Briggs or the DISC test or something like that. My personal favorite is the Enneagram. It gives you 9 types, and there's a wing associated to your type because there's layers to personality, right? We did this with those 10 or 12 guys that went through the Bloom program with Asbury, and it was incredibly effective. It was, and this is the first time I've done it as a coach with my players, and it was a lot of fun. It was incredibly effective, and just a quick application. Everybody's different, right? I mean, we all have these different, quirks to our personality. We're all motivated a little bit differently. There's a player that's in mine that's one of our captains, and his personality type is actually captain, which is what's kind of funny. But he is so laser focused on results and outcome and structure and, right? And I'm such a big picture person that a lot of times I get bogged down by little details. But I learned when I'm talking to him, I need to have things bulleted. I need to have very, very clear messages with him, and I can't BS him. Right? I'm such a talker, and, I can pretty much talk my way out of anything, and I can reform something to be positive. I couldn't do that with him, period. I had to go look at him and I would say, player, look, this isn't cutting it, dude. Or, hey, man, let's talk. Let's go. Now, there's other players, and everybody kind of knows this, right, to some form or degree, that, some players you can maybe get away with yelling at a little bit more, which we talked about earlier, or some people you got to kind of pat and nurture, right? Everyone knows that to a degree, but when you go through these assessments, it really lays out pretty clearly and gives you some tools how to best communicate with them. And at the end of the day, you want every tool possible to reach your players effectively, right? Time is our most valuable resource in humanity, but especially as a program director and leader, time's of the essence, right? So every moment you have with your players, it's got to be constructive. It's got to be building. So if you have a playbook, if you have a scout guide to how to best win that player, use it. And I'm telling you, it's incredibly effective. A lot of really, really good conversations came out of those times. We did it individually and as groups, right? We kind of talked about their quirks, and we had a lot of conversations because of that branched into fear. When you get into games, why do you fear so much? Right. And you have some of these players that are such high achievers in their personality that's when all of a sudden, when one thing goes wrong, that's why they check out, is they're so laser focused on achieving. So if you know that as a coach, you can start coaching them through that. Hey, your worth is not dependent on your performance. Okay. And the sooner you figure that out, the quicker your performance is going to skyrocket. Okay. But so those kind of conversations happen. And guys, I'm telling you, it's incredibly, incredibly effective and useful. I highly recommend walking through things like that.
Hey, Jordan, what was the name of the one that you like?
Enneagram. Let me type it on my phone because it's weird spelling, but it's ENNEAGRAM. Enneagram.
ENNEAGRAM.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And if anybody has any questions, I mean, this is a good point where we can maybe slow down for a second. Feel free to just jump in like that and ask. I'll give you a second.
Yeah, Jordan. So I coach post grad in Florida.
Cool.
For coaches that do coach post grad or prep, a lot of the times they live with the players. They're with them 24 hours a day. What's something you could recommend to coaches that are in that situation as far as, keeping with the mental health and keeping the relationship positive, but also authoritative, because you're with them 24 hours a day. They see you every day, no matter what, lunch, dinner, in the shower, everywhere.
Yeah. It's definitely a different scenario when you are together all the time. It's a little bit different than when you're at the high school level or you're not seeing them every day. And really, if you're in that position, if you are post grad or college and you're on campus and things, you really have a unique opportunity to spend so much more time on this. And what this really comes down to is your consistency, period. If you waver as a leader and your standards and things of that nature, things like this are going to be incredibly hard to implement. Not only this, but them following you is going to be incredibly hard to garner. Okay. So really the best thing I can say is you have to constantly be self-evaluating and going, okay, these are the standards I set as a, coach, director, whatever. Am I following these consistently? And this is where your staff comes in, and you have to, and I'll get into this a little bit in a second about using your staff. So many head coaches do not utilize their staff well enough. Okay. And this is a great area for you to invite your staff in and go, keep me accountable. Okay. Where a lot of head coaches are so fearful of it, but it's so good. Okay. Because it's going to start building trust with your coaches. If they're going to be honest, go, hey, coach, this is one of our 4 core values. You're doing you're doing 1 out of 4 right now. What's going on? You're going to go, shoot, you're right. And if you know that your coach has the willingness to give you that, that's a big deal, that honesty. So I would say accountability, your consistency is huge. Just by doing that is going to speak volumes to your players. But the biggest thing that I can, on top of that, I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a coach that, they were kind of struggling in the middle of the year, and a former player reached out to him and, was just saying it was a former player of this program. And he goes, one of the problems that we had is we didn't have any standards. It was just kind of like, if this person did this, you kind of might yell at them a little bit, or if, this person did this, it was totally fine. But you know what I mean? So standards are huge, and hold to them. All right. So be consistent, allow accountability, allow your staff to speak into your life, and have those good standards. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Are there other things you might be looking for?
Yeah, that answered my question. Helps me understand, a lot of like you said, the mental health, I try to focus on that a lot. So yeah. A lot of what you're saying and what you're talking about is stuff that I have done, and I know some other coaches have done.
Yeah, good. Yeah, keep doing it. And also, as you started talking, I remember you said the thing about, I think you said use the word authority. A lot of times that will happen naturally if you're upholding those types of things. And it's so hard. I've seen you post a lot of things, and it looks like you have incredible relationships with your players, just from what I've seen from afar. And that's a beautiful thing. And you and I, from what I gather from that, is we're both very relational. Okay. I'm an incredibly relational coach. I tell my players, I don't know any other way to coach if I don't have relationships with my guys. I just don't. And that can be a weakness. It can be a strength. I'm still figuring it out. I'm a young coach too, right? So I'm still figuring out that level. At the end of the day, like, I've learned that I can't be their friend, period. I will love them with every ounce of my being, and I will always be there for them no matter what. At the end of the day, our jobs are dictated by how well they do. I think there's a quote by Huggins with West Virginia University, and he's like, it's kind of crazy that my livelihood is in the lives or in the hands of like 18 to 20-year-olds, and it's true. So our job can't be to be a buddy all the time, as those moments will come and you'll clown with your players and you'll have those moments, and those are good. But at the end of the day, got to set those standards. You got to uphold them. You got to be tough on them, but also do it in a way with compassion. There's actually another quote, and I don't know if this will help at all. I think it will. Jay Billis said, "You have to find a way to be demanding without being demeaning." Okay, so you never need to demean your players. I'm sure you don't. But so all those things kind of work in this, yin and yang of credibility and authority, but with compassion. And it kind of just works to emphasize that. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Anything else? Ready to move on?
I think you're good to go.
Cool beans. Okay, so let's look at this mental journey. So you start off, obviously, at the beginning mindset, okay? And this is where you establish those expectations that we talked about a little bit earlier. You want to expose them to failure, and you want to start off with smaller adverse stimuli situations, okay? So early on in the season, so again, like we're before game one, okay? And we have what I think it's like 10 practices or something like that you have to have before you play a game. I don't know what it's like at post-grad, but I know I'm sure there's a certain number of practices you have before game one. You want to expose them to failure as often as possible. And that sounds so weird, but you want to expose them to failure. Where there's opportunity to fail, there's an even greater opportunity to succeed. Okay. So either way, you're really winning. Okay. If you see them fail, you give them the opportunity to learn that outcome and what happened to garner that failure. But you're also giving them the opportunity to learn and then even succeed. If you put them in a tough situation early on, you're really helping them out in the long run, and that could give them up. If they overcome it, man, that's a good benchmark. You're going, okay, we're here before game one. That's amazing. Okay, so you establish expectations, expose them to failure very early on, but in small doses. Don't kill them right away, right? In small doses, and encouragement here needs to be high. Okay. If you're not very much of an encourager, you're kind of harder on your players and you think encouraging is soft or whatever, forget it. Okay. Please forget it. Okay. Because what's going to happen more often than not this early on in the season, they're probably not going to succeed very much if you expose them to these things. They probably will fail. Okay. Encouragement needs to be incredibly high right here. Okay. So then you start progressing, you get to the middle mindset. Okay, so this is where you can start elevating those expectations a little bit, right? Whatever they are with your players, you can start raising the bar a little bit. This actually, I meant to put this in the slideshow, so forgive me, but one thing that's incredibly important as well that kind of plays into this conversation right now, set small goals, not just long-term, not, hey, we want to have a winning percentage of 600 by the end of the season, or, we want to be conference champs. Those are great. Have those all day long. We all need to aspire to those things, and we all want to be conference champions, sectional title winners, all those things. That's great. But set small goals that they can accomplish in the meantime as well. And if they fail them, that's okay. Like, if I don't know, what's a small one? If they lift weights on their own 3 days a week, whatever, okay? If for 2 weeks straight they did it twice, okay, don't adjust that goal. Say, hey, you got to do this 2 weeks straight before we move on. Boom. All of a sudden, 2 weeks go by again. They're in the gym 3 days a week for 2 weeks. Boom. They just had a small sense of reward. They go, okay, yeah, I can do this. What's next? Okay. Give them small wins throughout the season as well. So this is where we can start having a little bit more competitive practices, and you raise the stakes for failure, right? So if you have some sort of adverse simulation, okay, and losers have, I don't know, we called it the gauntlet at CCU, where it was just a crazy running workouts that you did not want to do, okay? Raise the stakes for failure a little bit, okay? Because they're going to learn really quick. I do not want to go back there. And what do I have to do to adjust to win next time, right? Again, this is I wrote positive reinforcements. That is not a word. Reinforcement would be great. Not reinformance. Sorry about that. But so it's a little bit less of this high encouragement and patting on the back all the time. But it's just a little bit more of like, hey, doing a good job. Keep it up. This is the path that we want to be on. Okay, so you're starting to, for lack of a better word, kind of wean them off of you as a coach a little bit. So when they kind of pass this phase, they get to, the promised land of the winning mindset. Okay, so this is where you can elicit leadership now. Okay, so players are going to be able to start self-governing themselves and lead each other without you. They're going to expect more out of themselves on their own. This is where your standards and culture is not only created, but it's applied. Okay, it's one thing to dream it, right? It's another thing for it to be implemented. So this is where your standard and culture is implemented. It's real. It's not just a philosophy. It's a living, breathing organism within your culture. Okay, and then you kind of step into a supporting role. You don't have to focus so much on this mental aspect and all of these things. You can kind of just focus on coaching the X's and O's now. You're not going to have to take time out of practices to rip somebody, to talk through, undisciplined stuff or doing something wrong. They're going to start doing it on their own because that's a standard and that's the expectation. You didn't sprint through this drill, or dude, you are jogging through your cuts. If you jog, that messes up the timing of the entire play. They're going to start having these conversations with each other. I promise you. I see it all the time. Okay. So you have the beginning mindset where you establish expectations, middle mindset where you can elevate those expectations, and the winning mindset where you can elicit leadership. And you can kind of step back and be a supporting role. Okay. Any questions on that? Cool. So I'm about to get into the using your timeouts effectively. Are there any overall questions on this winning the mental game, mental journey, or anything before I move on to timeouts? Okay, cool. So let's talk about timeouts. And cool, we're about 48 minutes in. So I wanted to keep timeouts a little bit shorter. But I just wanted to give a few concrete things and talk through a little bit about timeouts because, again, so many coaches do not use timeouts well, okay? So here's 4 things. Have a plan, anticipate adjustments, time management, and the 3 R's model, okay? Let's talk about this a little bit. So have a plan. Know what you want to execute on the offensive and defensive possession, okay? So many times coaches call a timeout and they only talk about that initial possession. Guys, give them a plan. Give them something in advance that they can do on both ends, okay? It's vitally important. I don't know how many times I've seen that, and then you have your offensive possession, maybe you executed well, maybe it didn't, but you're getting back on defense, and you have 2 players that are trying to be in a 2-3 zone, your other 3 that are trying to match up, and all of a sudden, boom. Actually, this is what normally happens. You did not execute your offensive possession. It's kind of a quick rebound outlet. We got people that are in 2 different defenses, and it's a quick layup. So you just lost a timeout. They increased their run, and now you look foolish. The players look foolish, and it's a train wreck, right? And I'm sure you guys have probably been in that position where you're just like, great, that was awesome. That's exactly what we wanted, right? So know what you want to do on the offensive and defensive end and have a concrete plan. Now, in that idea, and this kind of flows into time management a little bit, but because it will save you time in doing this, but it's just having a clear plan, okay? What is very, very helpful. And what I've advised staffs to do, and this is kind of where you can use your staff conversation comes in again, have whoever you want, I would say your lead assistant, if you have a staff, if not, sorry, but if you have a staff, if you're part of a staff, if you are the lead assistant, I would start doing this and you will be a rock star in that role. But if you're head coach or whatever, have your lead assistant. You need to be having a conversation between head coach and lead assistant pretty much at all times, right? I tell head coaches to check in with a lead assistant probably every trip. Not every possession. I mean, obviously things are going through your head. You might be like, oh, we need to get out of this man or whatever, and then you're kind of moving on. But every trip you need to check in, okay? And one thing I advise heavily is to check in by letting your assistant know when you're probably going to call timeout. And this is important because what you want to do is that lead assistant, boom, takes your play board that like with the cord on it, right? And start writing. And what you should do as a coach is say, hey, I think we're going to run X, right, on the offensive end, and I want us to get into a 2-3 zone, okay? Or what it can be is, hey, if they're still in man out of timeout, I want us to run X. If they come out in a 2-3, and that's kind of where you anticipate adjustments. But if they come out in a 2-3, I want us to run Y, okay? And then what you can do is you can look who you have on the floor. You're not going to make any subs. Write them in their offensive spots for those 2 plays, for both plays, right? So as soon as he gets that board from you, as soon as he calls timeout, because what do you have, 30, 60 seconds? I don't know if the time's different for those levels. I can't remember anymore, but I think there's still 30 and 60 seconds. That's not a lot of time, right? So he hands you the board. He's already known. How many times have you had this conversation, right? They get the clipboard. Okay, who do I got in? Okay, I got Jackson. I got Toby. I have. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're in. Okay, Jackson. There's 10 seconds right there, and you haven't even got them on the board yet. You're still kind of thinking through what you want to run. I mean, it's just train wreck, right? So if you can have,
that's me. I'm the right hand, 5 in front of me.
Yep, exactly. And and that happens, maybe sometimes it just something keeps happening. And you call a quick timeout and you're like, give me the freaking board, right? And we all get there, right? I totally understand, but it's happened and it wastes so much time when you do that. So if you are the assistant or if you're the head coach, direct your assistant to prepare that for the head coach because it's so helpful. It gets you set up. You know what you're going to execute. And then a lot of times those boards have 2 sides. So on the flip side, if you're going to adjust the defense or if you're going to talk through something like, someone's not in help side because that happens every game. Somehow someone is not in help side, even though you talk about it all year long. Have them matched up on man on that board as well. So they can take quick, 15 seconds to talk about the 2 plays, right? And then he can flip on the other side and say, hey, this is what's going on defense right now. You got to plant your butt right here in that lane because they're on that, right? That's 30 seconds. And you just talk through offense and defense, okay? Hugely important to have a plan. We kind of talked a little bit about anticipating adjustment. And what you see is that having a plan just basically knocked out anticipating their adjustments and time management. That's how important that is, okay? It's kind of like a 3-in-1 thing here. But anticipate adjustments. Good coaches make adjustments in timeouts, right? So you're not the only one that's adjusting. I think it's so hilarious when, say their coach calls a timeout and they're going to be on offense. I love changing up the defense, maybe for 1 possession. And that's not I can't think of the word right now, but it's not some like crazy idea that I just invented, right? A lot of coaches do that, but a lot of coaches don't also, right? Because a lot of coaches don't anticipate adjustments. So if they call a timeout, they're going to run a play. They're probably aggravated with how your man is killing them right now. Okay, so they're trying to get a different look. Throw a zone. Or if they're bringing the ball all the way up the floor, start out in some sort of like a 2-2-1. You're not really trying to create a turnover. You're just trying to take time off the clock, get them out of a rhythm, and you can fall back into whatever you want. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing. Like, be able to anticipate their adjustments. If you called a timeout and you're on the offensive end, have something ready for them if they are in a zone. So like when they am on the ball and all of a sudden we go, oh freak, they're in zone. What are we gonna do? Your players not looking to like, we want to run, coach. They already know. They're already set up to go. And what's gonna happen is gonna be 2 things. You guys look awesome. The coach is gonna be like, are you freaking kidding me? How do you know that? Now you're in the coach's set. It's such a mental game, man. I'm telling you, it's amazing. So anticipate adjustments. time management, just don't waste time. Okay. And I have another story. I kind of talk about that a little bit and have a plan, but I kind of have another quick story. How many times have you as a coach, Lord knows I've been there, or seen as a staff or whatever, done one of these numbers, right? Call a timeout and you take 15 seconds to yell at a player for not executing something that you drew up in practice. Why? Do it after the game. Do it at halftime. Don't do it in time. You have 30 to 60 seconds to communicate very critical information to the minds of, I don't know, 14 to 20-year-olds. I don't know what the age groups all range from, but right? I mean, very, young minds, right? You have 30 to 60 seconds to execute this critical information. Do not waste time with, I told you you're supposed to be in the corner and you started on the wing and that must have, dude, the play already happened. He knew, right? It's probably already well known that whatever happened wasn't supposed to happen. Don't waste time on it. Make a note of it. Talk about it in film. Talk about it at halftime. Don't waste time in a timeout trying to correct a past mistake. Focus on future habits, future possessions, whatever. Okay. If we always tell our players to have a short-term memory, you have to as well as a coach. You have to, at least in the game, right? Make mental notes of it so that you can address it later on when you're, challenging and teaching. But in the game, you could have a short-term memory too, because if you're bringing up things, how can we tell them not to? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. Don't waste time. 3 R's model. Okay. This is kind of something that I came up with a few years ago because I was trying to teach myself when to use timeouts. Okay. It's different in AAU. You get like 2 timeouts a half, and it's just drives me nuts because you don't get to teach your kids enough. Timeouts are so useful. They're just trying to crank out games. But high school, I don't know what the rule is. Post-grad, I don't know. But try to apply these R's as effectively as you can in your context. They've been incredibly helpful for me as a coach. So you probably want to use timeouts for 3 reasons: to spark a run, to kill a run, so runs, to reset. So maybe, again, this is kind of a killer run idea, or maybe the game itself is just flat. How many times have we gotten a game and both teams, I don't know if it's just a defensive powerhouse game or what, but both teams have gone like a 4-minute just dry spell. And it's just like weird, like turnovers, loose balls, can't hold on to the thing, breaking. It happens, right? Just sometimes it's neither team's day. Call timeout, reset, maybe crack a joke in the game, get them loose, and just reset, right? It's very namaste, and get the chi back, and then rest. Sometimes you can't make a sub. Your guys are killing it. They're doing really well. Critical part of the game. You need to use that timeout to just give them a moment to breathe. And in these situations, talk out the game with them, okay? Don't focus on things that aren't going well at this point, okay? Keep them centered and focused on things that are going so beautifully so they can continue envisioning that, okay? Their confidence raises, and then their trust across the board is raised. Does that make sense? If you start bringing up things that also aren't working well, they're going to think back to that moment, and they're going to think back to how Timmy lost the ball and kicked the ball out of bounds when it was a crucial moment and we would have gone up 2 points. Now they're pissed again, okay? Focus on what's doing well at times like this. For when you're resetting and resting, focus on what's going well, okay? Does that make sense? That's it. I killed it, man. Just under an hour. Sorry, I did not want to go the full hour, but we're here. So do you guys have any questions? You want to talk through anything else? Time's yours. However long you want to take, but that's it.
First off, phenomenal. I got notes, pages, so it's amazing. Those practice plans, that was just mental exercise for us. I didn't know if you were going to revisit those or not, because I have mine.
We can. If I'm doing actual meetings, coaches, we actually go through them. So if you want to bring them up, that'd be great. I'm interested. I'm always interested to hear what coaches put in those. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's like coaches, it's not even on their brain to go through mental development stuff during practice. But we can talk about it, whatever you guys want.
Yeah, which ones you want to talk about? The first one, first set of them we did, or the second one with the development?
Yeah, let's definitely do both. I love the compare and contrast. But I mean, if you want to pick, you can pick whatever context from the first set that you want. So if you want to talk about, you don't have to do both. So if you want to do like,
Oh,
yeah, that makes sense. So whatever one you want.
like the first 2 weeks into the season,
Sure.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you just want me to read off what I wrote down?
Yeah.
Briefly. You got like a 10-minute warm up, like 15-minute skills. Do like 10 minutes of our offensive concepts, 15 minutes of shell, 15 minutes transition, and then like 10 minutes of competition to end.
Yeah. Cool. Go through them one more time if you would. I want to.
Sure. Let me see. Can you see it? Can you see what I wrote? No. 10 minutes warm up, whether it's like a team drill and like stretching, etc. Some individual skill development, and like offensive concepts, small group work, some shell defense, some transition offense and defense, and then some more live competition, whether it's 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5.
Gotcha.
So mine came out to 75 minutes, about 10 or 15 minutes each segment.
Cool. How about was it kind of the same thing with the mental when you carve time for mental development?
So one of our presentations we had a couple weeks ago was like, or not a couple weeks ago, like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
He was talking about just like some type of mental warm up games, kind of. So I did 2 like kind of mental development segments. First one would be like that 5 minutes, kind of get them into the competition mode, like 5 minutes of whatever mental development drill, and then get into our warm up, and then kind of do the same skills, concepts, shell transition. And then after competition, kind of revisit the mental development, see where they're at after, how they responded through some things, and then like a fun team drill at the end.
Yeah, that's fun. That's good. I'll talk a little bit more on some different things as well. Jeff, do you want to add in on yours as well?
Yeah. So what I usually do is kind of like what Ben said. I usually have the same thing, but for the practice plan I wrote down, what I like to do is what I'm gonna do. Actually, it's not what I like to do. Is in the beginning I have them stretch, obviously, get them loose, and then I basically wrote down a normal practice plan. Like this is what I do.
Yeah.
Every day, and so I have them stretch, and then I talk to them about the beginning, like what games we have coming up, all that fun stuff. And then I usually have them do the stretching. Then I do like maybe some layup drills, because a lot of them for post grad, a lot of them can only go one way. So I have them go both ways.
Yep.
For the layups, left and right. And then I have them do different finishes. Then usually go over plays. I try to make both like the starters and the bench play together, so they all are familiar, because obviously the whole game, you're not going to just have your whole starters play together the whole game, then the whole bench play together. So, I try to get them all playing together, understand where each person should go. I don't really have like positions.
Yeah.
So after that, go through the plays, then I'll do a couple live drills based on the situation where we could see, this is another hard thing. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over words, but for post grad, we don't really have time to prepare as much, because a lot of the teams don't have film or anything. So we're going into a lot of the games blinded. So, it's so hard to develop a practice plan when you're doing post grad, because it's a totally different game. It's like AAU on steroids, if you could say that.
Sure.
Yeah, but at the end, I usually once a week I'll try to have somebody come in and speak, like a former player. If I can't have them come in, I'll have them on the phone. Talk to kids how to play college. It's all college players. I don't have anything else, but I mean, this is simple stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like you said, you're definitely in an interesting position. But here's the thing: sometimes I get so sick and tired of how much emphasis we put on another team. It's like your guys don't even, or I should say our guys, right? It's like our guys don't even do what we do well. Let's get our guys killing what we our standards, our culture, our plays, our execution. Like if we're not executing our things well, dude, I don't give a rip about them. Like I might take 5 minutes and say, hey, they run a flex offense. They're going to run it on repeat. Okay. They're going to try to get zero off, at the elbow, and they want him to play one-on-one. Okay. And I'll give him a scouting report and say, hey, here's what you want to look for. Okay. A lot of times that's it. If I could run it my way and that's how I did it, I would hardly spend any time on what they do. Because what you're trying to do throughout the season is constantly perfect your team's craft. Okay. And I mean, how many times in games, what would you guys say the ratio is? That might be a weird way to put it, but are you more often or not getting mad at your guys' execution or their execution, right? Normally it's yours. Obviously, if they have guys, we talk about this in practice, he's a shooter, why do we keep leaving him open? That's like it, normally, right? It's like one or two moments where like, guys, this is what they do. The one thing that we said that we had to, and that's what it is. Everything else, we're mad about our execution and what we're not doing well. So why would I spend 60% of my practice going through what they do? Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't add up. So really, it seems counterintuitive, but you're in a great position to where you don't really have to worry about it. Yeah, it's nice to have film. You can look at it. That's always nice. But at the end of the day, like our job as coaches is to perfect our craft with our players. So that's kind of a different take than a lot of coaches that you don't hear a lot of people saying that. But for you, I would look at that as a positive. It's we don't need to worry about it. Let's get what we do down really, really well. And once we do that, keep elevating those expectations, keep elevating those stakes and things from there. So that's my opinion on it. There's a lot of different.
I get what you're saying. It was just hard to juggle it I keep basing it off of last season because I didn't have an assistant. So we've 40+ game schedule all over the U.S. and then having practices and have to take them to weights and lunch and dinner. And
you don't have an assistant?
I didn't. No.
You this year or will you?
Yeah, this season in Orlando.
You will have one. Okay, good. Jeez.
Yeah. I'm actually going to be an assistant this next season on the main team. We have 3 teams.
Oh, okay.
I'm the head coach of the second team.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's always nice to have a staff, even if it's one person, man. Asbury, I feel like we're really sometimes a little much, but we have we have our associate head, and then we have literally 4 more assistants. I mean, a lot of them volunteer, but it's crazy, man. Having a staff is so huge. That's awesome. So good. It's good. Anything else? You guys have any other questions or?
You mentioned a book.
Sorry, one thing I was going to say on the mental aspect of it, obviously, Jeff, like you just said, now you can film yourself. That's always a good thing. If you can get some way where you're filming maybe the competitive part of practices, maybe you can get a player from a different team. I don't know if there's a girls post-grad team. I don't know really how post-grad works. I'm going to be completely honest. But if there's just someone available that can film the competitive parts of a practice or film a game, just something to give your guys, they can see what they're doing in motion and talk about those mental aspects. But yeah, definitely take time that are also outside of drill stuff. Those are all good. Definitely keep doing those. And I had that in one of those slides, IQ drills, where are you guys familiar with Tyler Morningstar? He's at Leo. He is, dude, if I was a head coach right now and I needed an assistant, I would hire him in a heartbeat. He is so good at coming up with live drills that are actually applicable to game scenarios. I was a king of doing stationary things or doing 2-ball dribbling, which is good, but they don't do that in the game. That doesn't, you know what I mean? That doesn't have any application. It just wastes time, and it kind of makes us look somewhat okay as coaches, we're challenging them, but it doesn't do anything. And I had all these drills like that, and he was like, Jordan, I'm gonna be honest with you, man, none of these games are very they translate very well to an actual game. He's like, try some of these things. And I'm telling you, as soon as I added some of these drills, dude, their IQ through the roof. And then that got me better, and I started thinking of different drills had this game called high-low where I set up 2 chairs and they attack the chair. And if I say high, that means that the defender closed them off on the high side and they have to like make a dribble move and go low. And then they get to the next chair. If I say low, they got to go high and finish at the rim. So it's kind of this gut, instant reaction thing where all of a sudden you see a player like, boom, they have a high closeout. Okay, bam, dribble move, I'm going low and I'm attacking. Help side came high, so I'm staying low and finishing on the inside of the rim. Things like that. So it's like those drills are definitely great, but can you do things that are also thought-provoking outside of the court, whether it is film or, it's kind of like what I did with you guys with the practice plan thing. Like, were you guys going to think through how to add mental development? Like, are there things like that are translating to players as well? So all those types of things. But Ben, I think you're going to say something. What were you going to say?
You mentioned a book earlier and I couldn't write it down or I didn't know what you said.
Crucial Conversations.
Crucial Conversations. Okay.
Yep. And that's obviously it's a communicating book, but, and it's really, and I think I read that in my business communication class in my undergrad at some point. But like I said, it's incredibly applicable to interpersonal communication, in any context, but great book. It really kind of emphasizes those 3 things that talk about high emotion, high stakes, and opposing opinions. It kind of just talks through those things. And there's, some stories through there about, conversations that went wrong and things of that nature. So Crucial Conversations, great book.
Awesome. Well, I don't have anything else for you. I was just trying to wrap up. This has been a great 2 weeks. I really appreciate every coach, guest, whoever, agent, whoever came on to support the Indiana basketball area up here. It was an honor for me to have some of these people on, some of these great Hall of Fame coaches. I mean, go through the whole list. We had 25 plus presentations, so I couldn't have done it without Feel for the Game, Jeremy Roush, the whole crew over there, my co-host Jeff Metzger. I just want to thank everybody for coming on here and making this happen, and I hope to continue, putting out more content throughout the entire year. So, Jeff, if you had any closing remarks, go ahead.
Yeah, so to touch back on the film, so we had every game, filmed and everything. It's just a lot of the schools, when you're playing all over the world, or not the world, the U.S., some of the schools don't have film. So that was the only thing,
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, review yours as much as possible, but but I get that.
And then I'm going to contact you, Jordan, outside of this, and we can talk about postgrad. I know you say you're not familiar with it. I can let you know some things.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I just heard that Fort Wayne just got a postgrad program, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
You want to check out, there's a podcast. I'll send you the links for that too. He came on and spoke with one of my buddies, Indy. You know Indy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to get on his podcast at some point too. Yeah. He's great.
Well,
he's a man. But yeah, man, if I can say it, dude, I mean, you were talking about all the coaches that have been on here, and I think I texted you this, Ben, but I was blown away, man. I mean, there really were. I mean, you say Hall of Famer, like that's legitimate. Like there are Hall of Fame coaches on here, and that's incredible. So kudos to you guys running this thing and all that were involved. I mean, that's amazing. I was able to watch a couple of presentations, and it was just great stuff. So kudos to you guys. That's awesome.
Like I told you in those texts last night, I feel like I was still planning it as it was happening, and now it's over.
Yeah, that's good. That's funny.
Basketball carries on. So, hey, we'll talk very soon, and we'll, like Jeff said, talk outside this, and we'll stay in touch. So, hope we get all through this and see you soon. All right?
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.